At Placentia some soldiers mutinied, and refused to accompany Caesar longer, on the pretext that they were exhausted, but really because he did not allow them to plunder the country, nor to do all the other things on which their minds were set. For their hope was to obtain from him anything and everything, inasmuch as he stood in so great need of them. Yet he did not yield, but with a view to being safe from them, and in order that after listening to his words, and seeing the guilty punished, they should feel no desire to transgress the established rules. He called together both the mutinous men and the others, and spoke as follows. Soldiers, I desire to have your affection, and still I should not choose on that account to share in your errors. I am fond of you, and could wish, as a father might for his children, that you may be safe, prosperous, and have a good reputation. For do not suppose it is the duty of one who loves to acquiesce in things which ought not to be done, and for which it is quite inevitable that dangers and ill repute should fall to the lot of those who do them, but rather to teach them the better way and keep them from the worse, both by admonishing them and by correcting them. You will recognize that I speak the truth, if you will not estimate advantage with reference to the pleasure of the moment, but rather with reference to what is permanently beneficial, and if you will avoid thinking that gratifying your desires is more noble than restraining them. For it is disgraceful to take a momentary gratification on which you must later repent, and it is absurd, after conquering the enemy, to be overcome yourselves by pleasures. Why now do I say this? Because although you have provisions in abundance, I'm going to speak frankly and without disguise, you get your pay in full and in season, and you are always and everywhere supplied with food in plenty. And although you endure no inglorious toil, nor useless danger, and furthermore reap many great rewards for your bravery, and are rebuked little, if at all, for your errors, yet you do not see fit to be satisfied with these things. I say this now not to all of you, for you are not all like this, but only to those who by their own greed are casting reproach on the rest. Most of you obey my orders very scrupulously and satisfactorily, and abide by your ancestral customs, and in that way have acquired so much land as well as wealth and glory. But some few are bringing much disgrace and dishonor upon us, and yet, though I understood clearly before this that they were that sort of persons, for there is none of your concerns that I fail to notice, still I pretended not to know it, thinking that they would reform if they believed they would not be observed in some of their evil deeds, through the fear that if they presumed too far, they might be punished also for the deeds which had been pardoned them. Since, however, they themselves, assuming that they may do whatever they wish because they were not brought to book at the very outset, wax overbold, and are trying to make the rest of you, who are guilty of no irregularity, mutinous likewise, it becomes necessary for me to devote some care to them, and to give them my attention. For no society of men whatever can preserve its unity and continue to exist if the criminal element is not punished, since, if the diseased member does not receive proper treatment, it causes all the rest, even as in our physical bodies, to share in its affliction. And least of all in armies can discipline be relaxed, because when the wrongdoers have power they become more daring, and corrupt the excellent, also by causing them to grow dejected, and to believe that they will obtain no benefit from right behavior. For whatever the insolent element has the advantage, there inevitably the decent element has the worst of it. And wherever wrongdoing is unpunished, there self-restraint also goes unrewarded. What merit, indeed, could you claim if these men are doing no wrong? And how could you reasonably desire to be honored, if these men do not meet with their just punishment? Or are you not aware that if the one class is freed from the fear of retribution and the other is deprived of the hope of reward, no good is accomplished, but only countless evils? Hence, if you are really cultivating excellence, you should detest these men as enemies, for it is not by any characteristic of birth that what is friendly is distinguished from what is hostile, but it is determined by men's habits and actions, which, if they are good, can make that which is alien like unto itself, but if bad, can alienate everything, even that which is akin. And you should speak in your own defense, because by the behavior of these very few, we must all gain a bad name, even if we have done no wrong. For every one who learns of our numbers and impetuosity refers the errors of the few to all of us. And thus, though we do not share in their gains, we bear an equal share of the reproach. Who would not be indignant at hearing that while we have the name of Romans, we do the deeds of Germans? Who would not lament the sight of Italy ravaged like Britain? Is it not outrageous that we are no longer harrying the possessions of the Gauls whom we have subdued, but are devastating the lands south of the Alps, as if we were hordes of Epirotes or Carthaginians or Cimbri? Is it not disgraceful for us to give ourselves airs and say that we were the first Romans to cross the Rhine and sail to the ocean, and then to plunder our native land, which is safe from harm at the hands of our foes, and to receive blame instead of praise, dishonor in place of honor, loss instead of gain, punishment instead of prizes? Do not think now that because you are soldiers that makes you better than the citizens at home. For you and they alike are Romans, and they as well as you both have been and will be soldiers. Nor think again that because you have arms it is permitted for you to injure others, for the laws have more authority than you, and some day you will certainly lay down these weapons. Do not rely on your numbers either, for the injured are, if they but unite, far more numerous than you, and they will unite, if you go on doing such deeds. Do not, because you have conquered the barbarians, despise the citizens also, over whom you have not the slightest superiority either in birth or in education, in training or in customs. Instead, as is proper and advantageous for you, do no violence or wrong to any of them, but receive your provisions from them of their own free will, and accept your rewards from their willing hands. In addition to what I have said, and other considerations that might be mentioned if one chose to enlarge upon such matters, you must also bear in mind the fact that we have now come here to assist our outraged country, and to defend her against her oppressors. For of course, if she were in no danger, we should neither have come into Italy under arms, since this is unlawful, nor should we have left unfinished our business with the Germans and Britons, when we might have subjugated those regions also. Would it not be absurd, then, if we who are here for vengeance upon the wrongdoers show ourselves no less greedy of gain than they? Would it not be outrageous if we who have arrived to aid our country should force her to require other allies against us? And yet I think my claim so much better justified than Pompey's that I have so often challenged him to a judicial trial. And since he, by reason of his guilty conscience, has refused to have the matter decided peacefully, I hope by this act of his to attach the whole people and all the allies to my cause. But now, if you are going to act in this manner, I shall not have any decent excuse to offer, nor be able to charge my opponents with any unbecoming conduct. We must also pay heed to the justice of our case. For with this the strength afforded by arms is full of hope. But without it, that strength, even though for the moment it wins a success, has nothing enduring about it. That this is true in the nature of things, most of you understand. At any rate, you fulfill all your duties without urging. That is precisely why I have called you together, to make witnesses as well as spectators of my words and deeds. But you are not the sort of men I have been mentioning, and it is for this very reason that you receive praise. Yet you observe how some of you, in addition to having worked many injuries without suffering any penalty at all for them, are also threatening us. Now, I don't believe it a good thing in any case for a ruler to be overridden by his subjects, nor do I believe there could be any safety if those appointed to obey a person attempted to get the better of him. Consider what sort of order would exist in a household if the young should despise their elders, or what order in schools if the scholars should pay no heed to their instructors. What health would there be for the sick if the afflicted should not obey their physicians in all points? Or what safety for voyagers if the sailors should turn a deaf ear to their captains? Indeed, it is in accordance with a natural law, both necessary and salutary, that the principle of ruling and of being ruled have been placed among men, and without them it is impossible for anything at all to continue to exist for even the shortest time. Now, It is the duty of the one stationed over another both to discover and to command what is requisite, and it is the duty of the one subject to authority to obey without questioning and carry out his orders. It is for this reason, in particular, that prudence is everywhere honored above folly, and understanding above ignorance. Since these things are so, I never yield aught to these brawlers under compulsion, nor give them a free rein perforce. Why am I sprung from Aeneas and Iulus? Why have I been praetor? Why consul? For what end have I brought some of you out from home and levied others of you later? For what end have I received and held the proconsular power for such a long time now? If I am to be a slave to some of you and to be worsted by some one of you here in Italy, close to Rome, I, whom you owe your subjugation of the Gauls and your conquest of Britain, in fear of dread of what I should do so? That some of you will kill me? Nay. But if you are all of this mind, I would voluntarily choose to die rather than to destroy the dignity of my position as commander, or lose the self-respect befitting my leadership. For a far greater danger than the unjust death of one man confronts the city, if the soldiers are to be accustomed to issue orders to their generals and to make the prerogatives of the law into their own hands. No one of them, however, has so much as made this threat. If any had, I'm sure he would have been slain forthwith by the rest of you. But they are for withdrawing from the campaign on the pretense of being wearied, and are for laying down their arms on the pretense of being worn out. And certainly, if they do not obtain my consent to this wish of theirs, they will leave the ranks and go over to Pompey, a fact which some of them make perfectly evident. And yet, who would not be glad to be rid of such men? And who would not pray that such soldiers might belong to Pompey, seeing that they are not content with what is given them and are not obedient to orders, but, stimulating old age in the midst of youth and in strength, stimulating weakness, they claim the right to lord it over their rulers and to tyrannize over their leaders? Why, I had 1,000 times rather be reconciled with Pompey on any terms whatever, or suffer any other conceivable fate than do anything unworthy of the proud traditions of my fathers, or of my own principles. Or are you not aware that it is not sovereignty or gain that I desire, and that I'm not so bent upon accomplishing anything by every means at whatever cost, and that I would lie and flatter and fawn upon people to this end? Give up your service, therefore, what can I call you? Yet it shall be, not as you yourselves desire and say, but as is profitable for the Republic and for myself. After this speech he distributed lots among them for the infliction of the death penalty, and executed the most audacious. For these, as he had arranged should be the case, drew the lots. The rest he dismissed, saying he had no further need of them.